Welcome to tonight's webinar titled Overcoming COVID-19 Together. And it's a little bit like Monday night at the movies, and given most of our cinemas are closing around Australia and New Zealand, this is a little bit of what weeknight fun is going to look like, I'm imagining. Guys, tonight we're going to share with you a little bit of the back in motion strategic response plan to this pesky virus that we are affectionately referring to it as. And we think it's a very measured, a very sensible and balanced approach to some of the things that we think are the right response. And definitely over the weekend, you would know as well as I do that there has been a flurry of announcements and lots of speculation. Late last night, our Prime Minister in Australia came out of his national cabinet and he made a few very specific remarks about what is now going to be called the stage 1 of the national shutdown. State premiers for Victoria and New South Wales this morning added to that narrative. And actually in New Zealand, you've had a busy day as well. So lots of announcements, and you have accelerated very quickly to what is now looking like a national shutdown as of tomorrow for allied health practices right across the country. So there is no doubt, I think there is a lot of people on the webinar today who are interested in where we're all heading and what we are doing about it as a health group. And of course, we're looking forward to sharing you some of those insights. I think we have about 650 people on the call tonight, so it's a testament to still the interest that's happening around here. Now, it's a season for webinars, I get that. I think I'm averaging about one a day and about 5 teleconferences a day, and I suspect you are too, and so there's probably a fairly high fatigue level with regards to more information. Our digital feeds are overflowing, so I'm very conscious of that tonight. And we don't want to present information you already know. We have no intention of repeating things that you can easily find on a Google search. We're not going to summarize the government announcements. And there are so many other good sources of content that we can give a shout out to tonight. That means we can concentrate on what we think is a fairly specific topic, and that is this measured plan that we are deploying to make sure we are having the best outcome in our own situation. If we haven't met before, my name's Jason Smith. I'm a registered physiotherapist. I live in Melbourne. I have over the years of a 25-year career owned about 14 practices at different times. I have run large aged care and occupational health businesses. I guess I'm somewhat of an accidental CEO because my wife and I founded the Back in Motion Health Group about 20 years ago. And that means my day job now is facilitating a national leadership team of about 25 people. And they are supporting about 70 practice owners across Australia and New Zealand. Maybe 140 locations, 600 staff, and it's really our mandate to give these practice owners the best support that they can have. And when more than in a challenge like this are those resources depended on. To my left is the very talented Mr. Justin Groenwald. By day, Justin is one of the senior leaders in the Back in Motion Health Group. He has expertise in law and employment matters, amongst other commercial portfolio. By night, he is our COVID-19 task force vigilante, and he has been working through the night these last few weeks. And so we're very grateful to Justin. He is extremely talented. More than that, he has a big heart. And I hope you hear a little bit of that tonight. He is the main event. I'll be interviewing him for the first half of the webinar. And he will be giving some detail about this strategic response that the Back in Motion and the Motion Health groups have adopted. But he loves people as much as he wants a sensible and commercial plan to bring all of the people with us. So I'll give Justin some time in just a minute to kind of lay the groundwork. In the meantime, you just sit there looking as handsome as ever as I keep setting the scene, Jay. Now, I think it would be hard for any of us to imagine that we would all be sitting here even as recently as a month ago. Like, this has moved fast. And even for those who saw something coming, they probably didn't anticipate the extent of change. And, you know, I think For most of us, this is probably a first-time phenomenon to be living through such a global disruption. Personally, I feel like the fear and the panic is spreading faster than the virus, and that is not to be insensitive to the seriousness of what we are dealing with, but it is to just acknowledge that there's a lot of hearsay, there's a lot of distortion in the media. We can get 100 words from our health authorities and our government, and then we can get millions of commentary around that, which is often just complete speculation. And tonight we're just wanting to trade in the verifiable facts. We're just dealing with what we know, not what we could imagine, because we think that will serve you the best. Having said that, Back in Motion had its own rude shock on Monday last week. So the 16th of March was the first time we really gave some serious attention to our own preparations. We had 850 patient cancellations in one day across our network. In fact, we finished Friday last week with nearly 3,000 patient cancellations. There was an obvious decline in new patient numbers, and whilst we've been able to do some things to arrest that decline since then, there's no doubt it hasn't been without a lot of intervention. And of course, we're dealing with the same changes day by day that you are. And so we recognise tonight that it's less about the specifics of a health crisis, and it's as much about the social and the financial consequences that follow. And so the framework we want to introduce tonight takes all of that into account. There's good news in all of this, and I think you represent the most of that good news. When I get on social media, and I do that as little as possible, but I see that there's a lot of you posturing with positivity and hope, and you are speaking life into this dreaded situation and making the comment that you think we will be stronger on the other side, that our businesses, our teams, our families, our marriages, and our communities will emerge with greater strength on the other side. And I hope that is true. My caution is I don't think it'll happen by chance. I don't think we just accidentally get better. I think we have an opportunity to emerge better than we entered this crisis if we make good decisions along the way, and we plan wisely, and we take measured and sensible steps. And if you look in the literature, there is a word for that. It's called adversarial growth. It's this idea that we can develop and grow and personally and professionally become better at what we do by suffering, by going through hardship, by experiencing challenges. And I think the weekend has showed us that the pain is getting very, very real for allied health practice owners and practitioners, not to mention all of the other strata of the communities in which we work. It's getting very hard very quickly. And this opportunity to emerge strongly will come if we make wise decisions on the journey. And I think it's times like these that we all look for our strength and our hope somewhere differently. I know people who go to friends and family. Some of you take great solace in the social media and the private Facebook groups. Others look to mentors, they read books, they look inward. In my case, I go to prayer. I made a decision a long time ago that I'm going to put my trust in God because I think He has the best plan for my life. But whoever we go to, whatever we do, whenever you do it, I really want to encourage you that our plan tonight is really one about bringing hope and optimism in the face of realism, and that we are really taking a people-first approach. And by that I mean we really want to put your staff, your team members, your patients, we want to think very carefully about you as the owners and your families who have made a huge sacrifice and investment, and then by inference the community around you. We want this to be a people-centric plan, because when we emerge on the other side, and that's what I refer to it as, when we get to the other side, it'll be the people that count. And so I hope you hear that sentiment coming through. We are stronger together. I don't think in 25 years of being in the allied health sector, I have seen as much unity, as much generosity, as much solidarity. You guys are sharing, you're being vulnerable like I have never witnessed it before. And so we can be grateful that that is a positivity coming out of this challenge. But the opportunity is that when we get to the other side, we remain people first, that we remain relationship driven, and we don't lose this value that we are building right now. Now, Justin, I know when we get to the topic of COVID, things get very solemn and very serious very quickly. And I think that the internet is full of some pretty light humour to keep us balanced, and I don't want to take ourselves too seriously. And you made a comment to me the other day, and I'm going to share it whether you know it's coming or not, but you said that prior to the virus, people used to cough to cover their farts. Now it's more socially acceptable to actually fart to cover your coughs. And, you know, if we really need help at this point, you've got to introduce a Chuck Norris joke. And I heard the other day that Chuck Norris did get the virus, and now the virus is in quarantine for 2 weeks. You are never short of a laugh with Chuck Norris. On the subject of celebrities, we heard Tom Hanks. He actually was the first person on the Gold Coast that I'm aware of to register with a positive test. My mum rumoured to me the other day that John Travolta is actually being tested. And that's because he has chills and they're multiplying. And the good news is, it's okay. It was a Saturday night fever, that's all, and he's staying alive. So, of course, I'm in a studio. I can't hear what your reaction is. I'm going to believe you're laughing your heads off and enjoying it as much as I did. But we need to keep moving, and we want to talk about the seriousness of these topics, but not take ourselves too seriously. And so let's just set some context for the hour, and then Justin, I'm coming to you to help us walk through this plan. Firstly, Back in Motion doesn't believe we have all the answers. We are not here tonight because we think we've got it all right. This is the perfect plan. We're just sharing what we know in the hope that it stimulates a little bit more shared learning. And of course, we can't give you legal, financial, or commercial advice tonight. We're just sharing our story. So you will have very individual circumstances that we can't take into account in a group conversation like this evening. We want to avoid exaggerated responses. We don't want to create panic and anxiety. Tonight is about trying to give you our measured and sensible view of the world, and we don't want to repeat things that you have already heard elsewhere. And I want to give a really big shout out to the 70 practice owners who make up the Back in Motion and Motion Health groups, because in many respects they have co-created this plan. It's their frontline experience and their input that helps us help them. I also want to give a big thank you to Phil Calvert, APA President, and Anya, the CEO of the APA. They have my vote. They are doing an amazing job out there fighting for our profession and all of allied health as they advocate on our behalf, as is Mary Eldred, who I've been watching very closely as she is the CEO of the Franchise Council of Australia. And there are a bunch of partners who have been supporting us through this also and influencing the plan. Demante Legal, Electo Finance, Guild, OPC, and there's a heap of industry leaders who I would just keep pointing you back to, the likes of Jack O'Brien and Nick Schuster and Karen Finnan and Jade Scott, and there's heaps more. There's a lot of people doing a lot of good work. And so we don't want to take anything away from that tonight. We want to add just some new thinking in a very specific aspect to our response to this crisis. We are recording tonight, so you will get a link to this at the end of the evening if you need to leave early. All of the slides will be shared. In fact, Justin will be submitting to you a high-level summary of the strategic plan, and we've created just a few basic resources and tools to help you if you don't know what to do next. And so all of that will come at the end of the webinar. We're really splitting our night into two halves, and I'm moving quickly because time is precious. The first half, I'll interview Justin to specifically hear more about the plan, and then the second half, we're coming for you. So you have a Q&A box in the webinar facility there. You can be typing questions, and we will field those queries the best we can in the second half of the evening. And then in the final minutes of the hour, I'll close this out to make sure that we finish in a great, tight, clear position. Okay, that's the preamble. So Justin, let's turn our attention to you, and let's share with our friends here some of the insights that we have been gathering over the last couple of weeks. I know that you've worked feverishly on this plan, and it's not finished. It's a work in progress. It's remaining fluid. And for those who haven't yet heard Justin speak, I'm warning you, he has a beautiful, rich South African accent. Listen carefully, because you don't want to miss a word. But Justin, can we start with what do we even mean by a strategic plan? Because that's a buzzword.
Sure.
So what do we mean?
Great starting place. Well, Jace, I think a few weeks ago, we quickly realized that this whole COVID-19 thing was going to be a fairly significant event. This is not going to be an event that's just going to require a change in our business plan or a bit of a tweak. This is going to be something that's going to require some dedicated thinking. And so when you're seeing something like this, which is a once in 100 years event, as they're referring to it as, what do? Where do you start? And you've got a choice. You can be tactical and reactive, or you can develop a plan. And so what we've done is we have developed a group response plan. And the group response plan is really our roadmap, which is going to help take us through this time. So not unlike a patient's treatment plan, this roadmap will give us guidance. It will help ensure that our teams, our staff out there know that we are predictable in our responses, and that we can come out on the other side a stronger organization.
I love the idea of a strategic plan helping you look down the road, around the corner, and into the future. And so it really is about creating future value, not just quick knee-jerk responses to all of this information we see coming down the pipe. Absolutely. So Justin, you talk about the 3 pillars or the strategic imperatives of our plan. We've heard them, we've seen them in the invite. They are protect, prepare, and recover. What do they mean?
Yep. Well, protect is about people. That is our priority. We need to first start and make sure that our people are safe. We need to look after their well-being. One of the biggest battles of here is fear. And so we need to make sure that we move first to protect our people. When it comes to prepare, this is about preparing the organization, preparing our practices. As the storm clouds start gathering, we want to be doing all the sort of stuff that we can do now to prepare well for this season. And then recover, well, this is about, well, it's exactly that. It's about recovering well after the event. And physiotherapists will all tell us about the importance of post-match recovery. And what we want to be able to do is make sure that when we go into what will be a new normal, we are positioned well to thrive as an organisation. So that's what recovery is about.
Now, there's been new vocabulary as of the weekend, both in Australia and New Zealand. There's been this word shutdown. There's been this word lockdown. In employment terms, we hear about stand down, and they all sound deceptively similar, but they're different things. We have some escalation stages in our plan. The government has its stages. It's just, in Australia, called it a stage 1 national shutdown. We've all seen the announcements today. Actually, I saw another country's 4 stages of escalation. They're not very encouraging. Stage 1 is tell everybody nothing is going to happen. Stage 2 is tell them something might happen, but we shouldn't do anything about it. Stage 3 is tell them that maybe we should do something about it, but there's nothing we can do. And stage 4 is actually we probably should have done something about it, but it's too late now. Now, I'm guessing they are not our 4 stages, and they're not the same stages as the government. So can you walk us through our 4 escalation points and the predictive indicators?
Yeah, so with regards to our response, I suppose, what we didn't want to do is actually have an exaggerated response too early. On the other hand, we don't want to bury our head in the sand and pretend nothing's going to happen, that this whole thing will just blow over and we'll all be okay on the other end. If we are exaggerated with our responses early, people will get fearful and anxious. So it's important that we stage our approach similar to what the government might be doing, so we can actually journey through this whole event in a measured and sensible way. So our 4 stages really have predictive indicators. These are not ironclad scientific indicators, but they provide us with an informed approach to when we should be changing gear, changing level within the plan. So the first one really is level 1, which is where we've got less than 500 confirmed national cases. There's clear isolation controls in place and little to no practice impact. So that's kind of a level 1 stage. Level 2 is when there's active community spread happening. So greater than 500 national cases. We've got imposed social distancing, which we are practicing tonight, Jace. And this is where we start to see our appointment saturation drop to below 75%. Level 3 really kicks in at the time when we see accelerated community spread. So schools shut down, gatherings are potentially reduced to less than 5 people. The appointment saturation is below 50%. And that really defines our level 3 indicator. Level 4 is large-scale national shutdown. So severely restricted gatherings and appointment saturation of less than 25%.
So there's clearly a staged approach, and I think that infers that the virus itself is going through some form of staged evolution as well, and we want to match it. We want to be right-sized in all of our responses. Overlaying the plan, and I know that we want to get into some of the specific strategies in a minute for our listeners, but overlaying this plan, there are lots of advocacy issues that we are fighting for and wanting to help promote within our profession. Can you comment on that?
Yeah, so essentially we've actually identified advocacy as one of the core initiatives within this plan. So this is a right time to be actually advocating for important matters. So important matters like people first, telehealth services, essential service, that's hot on everybody's lips at the moment, and so on. But Jace, you're actually the one that's actually been in the centre of the advocacy. So I'm going to hand over to you to actually comment a little bit more detail on those ones.
So very briefly, because again, tonight we don't have the interaction to debate and to consider all the angles. And it's not my place to form a conclusion. But there are some hot topics raging in the profession at an advocacy front. And people first is actually one of them for us. So this idea of keeping our people safe, well-being, making sure our community are being looked after is paramount, and I don't think that's lost on anyone. But there's a lot of advocacy to be done in that space. As far as telehealth goes, and tonight we're not training in it or speaking to the specifics of it, it is a extremely complex space for us to do it well as a profession. So it's more than just video conferencing facilities, and I'm sure people agree with that even after a week or so of experience. It's about how do we bring quality, how do we do privacy, how do we do security, are our treatments effective, how do we do pricing, how do we get the subsidies from third-party payers, and on it goes, and not the very least of which is how do we change the paradigms of practitioners and patients to recognise it as being an effective alternative. And so there's a lot to be done in that space for it to really represent a way forward. You mentioned this definition, Justin, of essential services. Wow, that is just a minefield. And I think even within our own group, there would be divergent views on this. I think we understand the two sides of the argument, even though it's a complex narrative. In very simple terms, we are advocating for what we think is the best of both worlds. We think that there will be certain allied health services in this country that should be deemed non-essential. And in that sense, the government could and should shut it down so that there is very little risk of further community spread. And employers of practices can actually make good use, equitable, fair use of relevant shutdown provisions exactly for these types of situations. But on the same token, we want to advocate for certain allied health services to remain defined as essential health and medical so that they remain open. Because we know that there are people in pain who we need to keep. But there are other essential services that we directly support and can play a role in. We also are conscious that there will be a massive backlog of people needing care on the other side if we can't keep up with the demand. And so there is a very complex policy decision that needs to be made to come out of this one and ensure our profession are all winners. There are other advocacy issues relating to small business concessions. We're fighting quite strongly on behalf of the owners who need not just sensationalised headlines from governments and red tape and bureaucracy, but immediate and fruitful cash flow benefit. And so there's a lot going on in that space, and we could keep talking, but I think that kind of captures the bulk of it, Jay. All of which I think to our listeners still just sounds like nice headlines. So what I want to do is I want to get into the detail of the framework. It sounds like you have a perfect plan. Have a perfect plan?
Certainly not. I wish we could say that we do. No plan, and Jason, as you often remind us, no plan actually will survive first contact with the enemy, and we recognise that it's a plan that we know we will need to tweak along the way. But even though we might tweak and adjust it, and as we listen to our directors and our staff, we also have a framework which will remain, and that framework will guide us through this time. So it's our plan. It's what we feel to be the right plan for us.
Okay, so I want to give our friends some detail around level 1. Now I know that in the most part, and if you're watching the slide, you can see we think in our network we have moved into level 2, and in some cases in New Zealand we're actually hurtling into level 4. But level 1, in case there are people who are still catching up and thinking, have they got all their ducks lined up and in place? What are just some of those key initiatives? We don't have time to go through them all, but some of the key strategies and actions that we implemented in level 1.
Sure. So if I look at those 3 main focus areas, so under the header of protect, this is a great place to get some risk assessments done in the practices, make sure that we're doing what we can to identify the risks. There's some sensitive staged communication to our team members and to clients, heightened hygiene and cleaning regimes, and we also put a restriction on all travel. In terms of preparing, we started investigating alternative services such as the telehealth service, engaging our supply chain partners early to make sure that we've got consistent supply, and commissioning automated daily reports so we can kind of start watching the figures and knowing what's happening in the organisation. Under recovery, we've got providing staff guidelines on how to answer questions, difficult questions and cancellations, and engaging a system of proactive call cycles as well.
Okay, knowing that we're going to give people a lot more detail in a document after tonight, take us straight into level 2, because this is where we're living for the most part. Level 2, what are we doing in response to level 2 on the ground at a practical level?
Right. So if we look at those three focus areas, so protect, it's about strict social distancing measures, making sure we're doing the right thing under the law as well. No interstate travel and no industry conferences, so we would put a lid on those. Under preparing, this is where we started doing some financial scenario planning for each of our practices, making sure that especially those who might be a little more vulnerable at this time can start preparing themselves from a financial perspective. We started exploring the federal and state government packages and New Zealand as well, getting our heads around that so that we can make sure we support any applications and that we may need to submit. And also considered right-sizing our teams. So conversations have started to ensure that our teams are right-sized for this time. And then under recovery, implement those telehealth strategies, start developing a recovery marketing plan, and invest into growth strategies as well.
I know one of the things that we spent a lot of time on was that financial scenario planning, where we modelled out the impacts of break-even point, employment costs, what we might predict a downturn in revenue, and that implications for bottom line for practice owners. And we're going to give you a very basic model around that tonight. in the aftermath of the webinar, so you can plug in some of your own figures and see how all that plays out. But I think all of that forecasting activity, it's not to create panic, it's to be well informed. It's to help you decide how to right size your team, what sort of rostering decisions to make without lurching into the urgent and sometimes extreme reactions of redundancy, creating panic. So let's talk about level 3 and 4. And I suspect that for some of us, the week might unfold in such a way here in Australia that our practices will escalate into level 3. And as I said, in New Zealand, it's our opinion that our network is really moving into level 4. So what are we looking into the future to do for those practices?
So in terms of protecting, that's about limiting the number of people in our practice, again, to honour those social distancing requirements, cancelling group exercise classes that may be a need, working from home where possible, and closing down waiting rooms. Preparing is about refining our local team employment strategies. So again, reviewing our rosters, our staffing rosters, and this is potentially for a slightly longer term. And then putting in place any emergency lines of credit, making sure that that's available. From a recovery perspective, I might just note that obviously as we go through the plan and go through the levels and time, the emphasis becomes more about recovery, and certainly at the start, the emphasis is more about protection of our staff. But under recovery, some of those sort of areas is that we need to potentially implement some stand-down provisions, look at subleasing of premises, consider team redeployment options, and that could be into aged care and emergency services. We want to repurpose some of our team members for perhaps longer-term strategic initiatives and see if we can utilise them in support of those areas, and develop a growth plan for the other side.
So because I've read the plan, Justin, I know how brief you're being in terms of the limited time we have to give our listeners some perspective around this. But really there is a long list of detail that sits underneath the surface here. And what we hope you're hearing is just that there is lots of staged escalation of sensible actions that you can take that will help you navigate each of these phases that we're living through under this pandemic. And if you're sitting there just kind of like feeling like this is volume and information overload, like we're saying, we will submit to you a summary of a much more complete version of this plan. But Joe, I just want to understand, is there anything else as you think about our strategic framework and what we're putting in place for our network, anything else you need to cover off before we Q&A?
I think, Jace, the main thing I'd like to emphasise for anybody out there is actually stop and make a plan. In the scurry and the hustle and bustle an event like this can bring, it can be easy to, like I said earlier, be tactical and reactive. But if you stop and create a plan, it kind of gives you a lot of clarity. It will give your staff a lot of clarity as well. And we'll be sharing it and sharing some resources as well. And I hope that helps you out there as well.
Fantastic. So like a few other people I'm about to introduce you to, Justin will make himself available to people, not just tonight, but as we kind of walk through the next few weeks. We're very grateful, Justin, for your leadership, your expertise. I mean, we don't take it for granted. But in your situations, it can be very easily, you can create a team experience here where these principles can be considered, and in your collective environment, you can start to create your own plan. I'm mindful that with so many people on the webinar tonight, you don't want to just hear us tell you what we're doing. Part of the invitation tonight was that we would try and field your questions, and we know that means we're exposing ourselves to a very wide spectrum of potential topics. We stand ready to do our best. Before I launch into some of your questions, and again, I'll just remind you that there is a Q&A box in the webinar facility that you can type your questions. I'd ask you to be as succinct as possible. Refrain less from the comments and more the questions so that we can get to those quickly. If you have a really insightful comment, again, we welcome it, but be succinct so that I can absorb it quickly enough to share it. But we do have some other virtual panelists who are scattered around the countries and willing to help on this Q&A section. And so we have Andy Ross online. Andy Ross is our New Zealand director. He owns multiple practices. He is a registered physiotherapist, and he very ably represents our Kiwi cousins across the ditch. We have Christy Green as a virtual panelist tonight. Christy is a full-time practice performance coach within the Back in Motion Health Group. She understands very well the pressure and the operational demands that's going on in your practice in the field, because this is her day all week long. We also have a number of other experts offline who are here to help. We have Mark Joy in finance and risk, George Balassis, who's actually our practice operations leader. We have Amber Field in marketing and communications, and Michelle McLeod in people and culture. And so if we can't answer it, and Christy and Andy don't feel they're the right people, then our commitment is to use the whole team to come back to you very quickly after tonight with some answers to round out your questions. Now, looking at the feeds coming through, let me just call it early that it is very unlikely that we're going to get through all of your questions tonight, because there's a lot coming through. That being said, we're going to launch into some of these. Bear with me as I just try and get some order from what I'm looking at. And it's your cue to start typing some questions in if you have something burning to ask tonight. So the first question is, currently, are we to stop group classes and only treat patients? So I think I'll give a quick response. We're going to be short and sharp on these, Justin, add to it. At this stage, in Australia, under stage 1 national shutdown provisions, what's really important is that you understand that these social or physical distance measures are paramount. Like, we have been compelled by government to take this very seriously. And so if you can provide services and still honour those social distancing requirements, at this stage, I have seen no evidence that would suggest otherwise, that physio services need to be shut down. But Justin, you might want to add to that.
My addition to that is, as a general principle, consider in your practice how and where you should be practicing those social distancing practices. So, for instance, even in your reception venue, are you adhering to those practices as well? So, not just group classes. Have a look around your practice. Consider everything, not just that.
There's certainly a lot of spooking going on around the closing of gyms, and we understand that they are a very particular facility. And at this point, we haven't seen any evidence that would confirm that physio practices and group classes particularly fall under that category of gyms. But we will stay posted to verifiable facts on that rather than the hearsay. In New Zealand, of course, you will be shutting down exercise classes if you are deemed to be non-essential service that we understand it becomes effective tomorrow morning. Next question from Ali is, do we see a time when private practices, particularly solo practitioners, are going to close? The answer is yes, we can foresee a time when that may happen. You're hearing tonight, I'm not sure whether you're in Australia or New Zealand. In New Zealand, it seems to be already happening. In Australia, it is likely to happen. We are not the people who make that decision, as in the physio profession won't be the decision maker. We advocate for what we hope is the preferred outcome around the definition of essential services. But as we have outlined tonight, we have a plan that if we are deemed to be a non-essential service and we are shut down, that we have strategies to combat that. We also have a plan that if we remain open, we can make the best of that situation too. Christine's asking, how much can we charge for a telehealth assessment and then a subsequent consult? Tonight, we're probably not the authority on telehealth and all of its peculiarities. I would recommend you seek a bit of counsel from Karen Finnan on that. We have created our pricing schedule for that. We have discounted it from our normal in-rooms fee, partly because it's a new and unproven method of delivery, and partly because we're trying to de-risk the experience for the client and retain clients. But as to the specific figure, I really don't have an answer. Christy, you might want to come back with an answer on that if you are ready to talk. And we'll keep moving, and if Christy wants to come back in later on that specific question, then so be it. There's another question about, is hands-on treatment deemed to be a contravention of social distancing? Or in terms of these imposed measures, is it a conflict with the standard that we've been asked to keep? These are the very complex and cryptic nuances that we are all wading through. And our position is really the interpretation of the government's, and even today, the Health Minister in Australia's clear instruction, and that is that physiotherapy services, along with other healthcare services, should remain open. It's not just that we can, but we should. And he is encouraging that and thanking us as a profession for the goodwill of that service. And so I would be confident that it is not deemed to be a contravention, but at any point you are not in direct treatment, you need to be honouring those. And of course, we're creative problem solvers, allied health practitioners. You should be looking at every other way you can deliver an intervention that might minimise that physical contact to obviously avoid spreading the risk. We're getting another question about whether physios are going to be declared non-essential. That's the question that we keep referencing as being a waiting game. So unfortunately, we don't have that answer in Australia today in terms of what the future holds, but we have certainty today that we are still permitted to be open, and under stage 1 national shutdown provisions, physiotherapy is not one of the businesses that is expected to close. And so I think we just take confidence from that. We deal with what we know, and obviously we wait to hear progressive announcements. The government did say that they will be reviewing these stage 1 provisions as often as they need to, but at a minimum every month, and to be expecting approximately 6 months in terms of time frame for how long we might still be enduring. Christy, are you on the call, and did you want to comment to the matter of telehealth?
Yes, sorry, I had a bit of trouble with muting then. Yeah, I think the importance with promoting telehealth is to actually be very versed around it and know the benefits for it. It is very new, so we would caution that you would engage your entire team to run ad hoc telehealth sessions, and that you should be very practiced at it. It's very new for you, it's very new for our client. At the end of the day, it's about the client experience and the wellness of our client and how they feel. So I would just caution that you be very well prepared in promoting the benefits of telehealth.
Thanks, Christy. We have a question for presumably Andy Ross in New Zealand. So the question is from a practitioner in New Zealand who runs their own practice. They feel like they don't have bandwidth to consider the recover phase of our strategic plan, that they're just in survival mode. And they're asking, Andy, to what extent have you considered what recovery looks like in the New Zealand context? Can you comment, Andy?
Yeah, thanks, Jason. And firstly, just thanks everyone for being here tonight under fairly trying circumstances, particularly in New Zealand with the announcements at 1:30 today by Jacinda Ardern confirming that what we probably already knew was coming, but probably weren't quite ready for. So it's effectively shut down all our services with the exception of telehealth. There's still some conjecture around whether we should be essential or not, with probably some of us in the room desperate to keep trading as essential and others quite relieved that the call has been made. So with those announcements, I think the areas to focus on with that recovery and that preparation phase. So with the recovery, first of all, I'd say take a week off. It's been a hard week. It's been a hard day, and you deserve it. Once you've had those, and take a week off once you've had those relevant conversations with your team, your wider community, and make those appropriate staffing adjustments. Seek advice on those, because that could make or break your recovery after you make those changes. You can only control what you can control. Don't stress about the elements that are out of your control. I think that speaks a lot to the mental health side of the recovery phase as well. And also just don't wait for the announcement in a month's time that we're going back to work. Keep up the comms with your team, the comms with your clients, have your marketing strategy in place so that everyone in your team and your wider community knows where you stand. And so when we do get the green light to go back to work, you're ready. I'll speak a little bit to the preparation as well. And when I talk about preparation, it's more in the context of preparing for the next event. We don't know when it's going to happen. We don't know how big or small it's going to be. We don't know if we'll be able to continue working through the next one or what level we'll land on. But I think the message from today is that we just don't know. So my observations from the social media chatter that we've been seeing is that there's a huge reliance on ACC, and the major concerns today are ACC going to cover contract and regulation, telehealth? Are they going to cover initial consults, or is it just going to be on the follow-up consultations? So I think the take-home message is that we're far too reliant on ACC. We're lucky we have a good ACC. We have a good system. I think there's a lot of positives that come with ACC, but I think we need to use it more wisely and use it as a tool to build a database of long-term clients who are willing to pay good money for quality service well after their ACC sessions have concluded, or even if they never had an ACC claim in the first place. I think it's those long-term clients who will see the quality care we provide, the hygiene standards we maintain, not just when we have to, and our ambition to help them achieve optimal lifelong health and not just quick fixes. So I think it's those qualities that if we really look to build on those in the future, that'll help see us through similar events. So we're not left scrambling, trying to find clients. We've got a loyal community of clients who know the quality we provide and are happy to continue seeing us. But hopefully that
next question that I have here is for Justin. And so specifically in relation to suppliers, how can you go about getting some of these consumables, particularly around personal protection, when clearly there are very few stock around?
Well, what we've done is we've actually started the conversation early with our suppliers, certainly from a back in motion perspective. We are looking to secure bulk orders so that we can make sure that there's a constant supply. So it's really about ensuring that you know when those provisions are coming, what the time frame is on that, and certainly what you'll find is certainly with regards to key suppliers such as OPC, when you work with them, they will come up with innovative plans for you as well, which is what we've experienced.
Great. Somebody's asking, Larry is asking, what do we mean in our levels of escalation and the predictive indicators of our strategic framework, this concept of appointment saturation? Can you just explain very briefly the 25, the 50, the 75% appointment saturation?
Well, the appointment saturation that we're looking at is essentially the diary full. So to what extent are our physiotherapists busy in the practice, utilizing their time, treating clients? So we monitor that, and as soon as we monitor that's starting to take a decline, then that's one of the indicators that will inform us as to whether we should be changing the levels or not.
Question for you, Christy, and I might let you just have a think about this while we answer another one in the meantime. But the question is, should we be spending any time or money on marketing our practices, given clearly now doesn't seem the time for uptake? So Christy, if you can get ready to answer that one in a minute. In the meantime, Tricia has asked from New South Wales, particularly with regards to rental relief and some of the commercial lease provisions, what should we be doing in this case? Certainly in our group, it's one of the level 2 strategies or actions. And so we have already initiated right across our network all week long, actually. There's been a lot of letters written and a lot of landlords being appealed to start making some concessions in line with what would be reasonable expectations. And so we would be encouraging that now's the time to be really seeking their support and partnership, so that it's in everyone's best interest that you endure past this point and remain a viable tenant. So we would be saying absolutely take that approach now. Christy, the comment around marketing in the local practices?
At this point in time, your best way of marketing is your team. Your biggest investment is in your team, and your clients already love and have a relationship with you. So I would be talking to the team about ensuring the wellness of your client. So having them ready and authentic conversations with them to acknowledge how your clients feel, to support them through this process, and to assure them that we are taking all extra precautions to deliver the best service. So that first and foremost, the wellness of our own clients is our best form of marketing, and that's what I would be concentrating my time on right now.
Justin, can you please explain for us a question here, the difference between shutdown, lockdown, and stand down?
All these wonderful terms that are suddenly becoming household names. Essentially, lockdown is when we all get told to go home and stay in our homes, and we're certainly not at that stage. When it comes to shutdown and stand down, shutdown is what happens to the business. Stand down is essentially what happens to your staff when you're in a shutdown environment. So with regards to stand down, there are provisions in the Fair Work Australia, the Fair Work Act, that provide for that. Just bear in mind that before you can actually implement those provisions, you essentially need to meet 3 criteria. There's 3 tests. One, that there needs to be a stoppage. Essentially, that stoppage must mean that you cannot provide any work for your employees, and that stoppage needs to be as a result of circumstances that are beyond your control. So there's a test that you need to meet to do that, and if you can meet that test, you can stand employees down, and effectively that potentially means you can shut your entire practice down if you need to, or just parts of that business.
Mm-hmm. Follow-up question on the same topic. What are the obligations to pay staff in the event of a stand down? So you just touched on that, but maybe just for absolute clarity.
Sure. So just for clarity, in the event of a stand down, so if you've met that test, then that becomes an unpaid situation, and that is under the Fair Work Act. Now, I might just also mention that in terms of stand down, if you're operating under an enterprise agreement, that may provide some different rules and some different circumstances. So if you don't have an enterprise agreement, you look at the requirements under the Fair Work Act. And if you do have an enterprise agreement, make sure you go and actually read up on the stand-down clause in that enterprise agreement.
Another question is around this shutdown scenario that New Zealand is experiencing and may be imminent for Australia. And the question is around home visits. Would home visits still be permitted under a shutdown scenario? And I think you need to watch these narratives very carefully. One of the things that remains unclear at all levels of discussions within the industry at the moment is actually whether even telehealth would be permitted in a shutdown scenario. I suspect that if we go into a form of shutdown like New Zealand is experiencing, and like what was threatened in Australia over the weekend, that home visits would be included in that, meaning that you would not be able to continue. But we will wait for the verifiable advice on that, as we will on telehealth and other forms of remote servicing, whether it's video chat, email, phone calls, etc. A question is from a New Zealander: do we think outdoor group classes is appropriate given their level 4 escalation? Justin.
That is a great question. Don't have the answer for that. But what I would like to say is go and search that response from a trusted source. The trusted source that we would go to in that situation would be the NZ.gov website. Lots of information over there and contact details as well. So that is a great question, and get it from a great source. We wouldn't be the authorities on that, unfortunately, but what we would say is get a trusted advisor.
Guys, I know there's more questions. I'm looking at the time. We have 4 minutes before we are planned to finish up, and I'm conscious it's a school night, at least for one more day in Victoria, and you do need a good night's sleep to be able to rally your troops tomorrow. So what we're going to do is we're going to wind up the webinar, and I'm committed to answering all of the questions that remain in the system through other means, and invite anybody who wants to come and have conversations with us offline. We're certainly happy to keep working through your queries. But a couple of closing thoughts. The main message tonight really wasn't about just trying to answer random questions and add confusion to this story. It was really about just speaking to the value we have experienced in having a strategic framework, giving you an early insight or a simple overview of what that looks like, and encouraging you that a staged plan, rather than necessarily trying to throw everything at the wall and hope it all sticks, is going to be a far more sensible approach. And we recognize this is our plan. Like, our plan is exactly that. It's our ideas and it's our approach, and you might not like them. And we are fully understanding that at the very least, you might want to cut and paste. You might want to take some ideas. We might have stimulated a new thought, or for some of you, we have given you a starting point. But we encourage you to be strategic. That idea of being able to look around corners and see into the future, plan for your practice life after COVID-19. All of the slides, a recording of tonight, some basic tools, they'll all be sent to you in a link. All of our panelists, so thank you, Andy, thank you, Christy, and thank you to those who are offline who have done preparation for tonight, and especially thank you to Justin. All of them remain available to you, not just tonight, in fact, probably not tonight, but tomorrow and onwards, to be able to field your questions. And so if you want to contact me directly, those details are published, and we'll triage them and try and come back to you as quickly as possible. Finally, in the coming days in New Zealand and in Australia, we suspect there will be further announcements. We suspect that there will be mixed messages because it's a complex story, and you will feel more pressure. And so we just want to encourage you to surround yourself with good people who give wholesome advice, who want the best for you. Be wary, actually, of who you let influence you. So guard your mind and guard your heart. Be very careful what you read. Try and be cautious about the negativity and the fatalism. And with a healthy dose of reality and responsibility, start to be thinking in this time of challenge how you can bring life and hope into a strategic framework so that you are feeling empowered to make wise decisions even when there is swirling uncertainty around you. On behalf of the team, and there's people behind the camera and in front of the camera, and there are 70 practice owners who make up the leadership of our group, we really are grateful for the professional camaraderie that we are experiencing this month. We only want to contribute to that. We want to help you as we know you are helping others. And so tonight doesn't have to be an event. It can be the beginning of lots of more conversations as they're required. And I have no doubt, and I say this with careful sincerity, I have no doubt not just because we have a plan, you probably have a plan. I have no doubt we as an allied health sector will get through this because we are resilient people. My encouragement is to recognise that we will get through it by being deliberate, by being strategic, by being sensible, by being cool-headed, and by being intentional, living our lives on purpose. And so honouring your time, finishing us right on 9 o'clock so that you can get a restful night's sleep. I hope you have a wonderful Tuesday in practice tomorrow. We will send you resources, and it's good night from Justin and me.